Alright guys, welcome back to Combat Insiders. Once again, Nick Portello over there, Josh Furs over here. We got a very special guest from Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. We got number 4 coming up in Cancun, Mexico. The matchmaker, the man behind making all these awesome fights, Nate Shook. What's up, my friend?
How's it going, buddy? Thank you for having me on today.
Hey man, it was absolutely our pleasure to have you on. I think Nick said it's very rare we get matchmakers on the show. Really, matchmakers don't do a whole lot of shows, so thank you so much, and it's our absolute pleasure. Before we get going to the Bare Knuckle 4 card, I actually want to find out what goes into becoming a matchmaker. How did you get involved with it? You know, what's your background? What's your experience like that kind of brought you to this point?
You know what gets into it? Xanax, Motrin, no sleep. That's what goes in. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So going back to 2003, I lived in North Carolina. Opened up a small gym back there, and things went really well. I enjoyed being a boxing coach for some mixed martial arts fighters. In 2006, I did some matchmaking for a MMA show in Virginia with David Feldman, his brother Damon, and that's when I really met David. Then I moved back to Pennsylvania in 2009. I was a boxing coach at a local gym there in Bethlehem, and I was also promoting my own shows. Dave had a great deal at a casino, and he ended up teaching me a lot about promoting. We were able to secure a deal at Sands Casino where I started promoting shows there underneath the company Pennsylvania Cage Combat. Did a bunch of shows up there under that label, and then I relocated to South Carolina after I merged companies with Dave's company, and I was working for XFE then. We did a huge event down here in South Carolina. I want to say we had a little over 4,400 people in attendance at the Bon Secours Arena in Greenville, South Carolina. But Dave and I had a great working relationship, and he told me about the bare knuckle stuff years ago, and I always told him that, hey, I'd love to be a part of it. I love mixed martial arts. I love boxing, but I'm telling you guys, you saw the other events. Bare knuckle is like any other sport out there. The way he laid out and came up with the rules and the time, it's not 5 5-minute rounds. It's 5 2-minute rounds. And in boxing, a lot of times you see these guys who they're building their records up early on in their career, fighting opponents who are 2-12 or 0-5, and it's not like that with bare knuckle. He's going out and he's empowering me to find fighters who have a ton of experience in MMA and in boxing, and bringing them in to fight bare knuckle, where one punch can knock someone out or cut them and stop a fight. So it's a great experience overall. I've been able to matchmake now between boxing and MMA. I'd say at least 80 to 100 fights. And now, I wouldn't say like this event for Bare Knuckle 4, he did 90% of the matchmaking. Like, I give Dave all the credit on this. I got a lot of the guys. I had a lot of interest from some Mexican fighters down there, but unfortunately I wasn't able to go to Cancun as much as him. So he's going to Cancun all the time. He's going to the gyms. He's putting in hours. I'm talking, he's down there, it seems like every other week. I could be wrong, but it seems like he's down there all the time, going to these gyms and meeting these fighters. So all credit to him on this card. I got a couple guys on it, but I'm working a lot now on the next 4 shows because he's traveling the country, lining up fights across the country. Like I said, we got New England coming up that we can talk about March 9th. But I don't want to get too far away from Cancun yet. So let's...
So the real question is, in a perfect world, you would match 12 fights and nothing would go wrong. How often does that actually happen, where the original card you match goes flawlessly?
It never happens.
Okay.
I mean, always something comes up. So our very first event in Cheyenne, Wyoming,
right,
it was hard for us to get some fighters because we had a lot of people interested, but a lot of people we had originally interested that reached out to us 5-6 months in advance, they just not all of them had what we were looking for. But then, like I said, Dave used his connections, and he reached out, and he got Beck Rollin and Rico Rodriguez and all these other big names. Like, that wasn't me. Yeah, that was Dave putting in the footwork and the hours and the phone calls, getting those. Now, I brought a lot of the other guys to the table, but I wasn't the matchmaker for that show. I did the backstage management stuff for that show. So then the second event, I have a good relationship with a lot of fighters, so I start getting more and more fighters on the card. So the second show, like, not to say it didn't touch the first show. Like, there was a lot of great fights, but we didn't have the knockouts like the first show. There was no Tony Lopez, Joey Beltran fight on the second card like the first card. But then the third show came along, and now we knew, it's a growing process. We knew exactly how to match things to make them even more exciting. And that third card was insane. I mean, overall as a card, that was probably my favorite. But again, we haven't had a fight like the Joey Beltran, Tony Lopez fight. I mean, that fight was just perfect. So,
Nate,
in all fairness, you may not come by another fight like that, right? I mean,
they're
fighting again, but it's few and far between that. It happens just like that. Like they just did. Like the phrase that kept getting kicked around is, "If you don't like this fight, then bare knuckles really not for you."
Yeah, and here's the thing, and I'm not biased on this. I don't think anyway. That was one of the top five best combat sports fights that I've seen, bar none. I mean, I'm talking, Gotti Ward, Forrest Griffin Bonner. If someone keeps that out of the top five action-packed combat sporting fights in history, I'd be surprised.
I can't say I disagree. What about you, Josh?
No, I can't disagree. It's hard to argue against that. Nate, when you're looking for fighters to put on the card, when you're looking for talent, what is the process, and I guess more specifically, what do you look for? Because there's a lot of things, right? There are good records. There are guys who have notoriety. There are guys who have exciting fights, but might not necessarily have the best record, right? So like there's a lot of things that encompass finding, I guess, that perfect talent. What's the secret to y'all's formula?
So it's still a growing process. Right now, there's a mixture. We need name recognition. If we have 10 or 12 fights on a card and people don't know who they are they really going to tune in and spend $30 on a pay-per-view? I don't know. But the great thing is we have some very talented UFC veterans who want to be a part of this. Beck Rollins has performed amazingly, in her fights. Chris Lytle. I mean, how could you ask for some bigger names than Chris Lytle and Kendall Grove? So we need the name recognition to bring the fans and draw the media. But then you also need your own talent. Guys like Marcel Stamps. He's fought in Bellator, but the guy's an athlete. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw his first fight, but what happened between him and Kendall Grove, I mean, he was on a whole nother level compared to his first fight. And, I mean, I can't see where his potential stops. I mean, he just is so talented. He hits hard, he's explosive, and the guy was a collegiate football player, an NFL football player, and he's an undefeated MMA fighter who punches like a freight train at 185. So we need a mixture of young, talented fighters like that, along with your name recognition to bring the people and hopefully sponsors and stuff down the road to get to pay-per-view buys. But like you said, I don't care about record. And here's a perfect example. We have guys who fought on our cards who won, who haven't came back to fight for one reason or another. Tony Lopez fought twice on our card. He lost both times. He is fighting the third time in 4 cards. And the reason being is Tony Lopez is entertaining. And the same here's what I talk to him. Do you guys ever watch pro wrestling? You ever watch WWF growing up?
Oh yeah.
Should I hang up, Josh? Should I hang up now?
Why's that?
Because
he's the wrestling guy.
He gives me crap because I used to do it, and then I talk about it sometimes, and I'll bring it up. So he gives me crap for bringing it up. But no,
I'll listen and
we
nod.
can talk about it. Go ahead, Nate.
Who's your favorite pro wrestler of all time?
Undertaker.
Yeah, me too. For my minimal
1000%.
Now, outside of WrestleMania, how many losses does Undertaker have?
Doesn't matter.
A lot.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Entertaining to you.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I'm trying to drive home
Yeah.
with bare knuckle. Outside of the tournament, I don't care who wins and who loses. And in the tournaments, I don't care who wins and who loses, but it matters to the fighters because they advance for more pay and for a title and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at matches, I tell the fighters, when opportunity knocks, you take it, and you go in there and you perform and be exciting. And the one thing that upsets me about MMA is you get guys, when you have this win bonus, they go in there and sometimes they make it a boring fight by accident because they're trying to win, because they want that extra, maybe they're fighting for 5,000, or 1,000, 1,000. So now it's not about entertaining, it's about winning and getting that extra money. The majority of our fights, I'm not going to say all, but the majority of our fights, I say 90-95% of our fights, people get flat pay. Thousands of dollars, flat pay. Because we want them to go in there and we want them to entertain and be exciting. And I think once you get away from that, you get almost into the part where fighters might end up jabbing and just trying to pull out a win and not get hurt.
Right.
But I'll tell you, like Chris Lytle, he went out there and he laid it on the line. I mean, he went out there and he just threw haymakers. And there's several other fighters like that too. Like I said, I keep going back to the Joey Beltran-Tony Lopez fight because it was so exciting. But I don't know how many people knew Tony Lopez before then. People knew Joey Beltran. I mean, the guy's been in, I don't know, probably a dozen fights like that or similar to that.
Yeah.
But how many people knew Tony Lopez outside of West Coast because he fights all the time out there? But now...
he's a king of the cage guy. Yeah, it's funny that you kind of brought up certain people because after Marcel Stamps won, we had him on the show.
Yeah.
And shameless plug, he's actually an awesome guy to talk to outside of fighting. And when you were talking about you need to brew your own stars outside of the names, I think we've had at least two on. Reggie Barnett is one. Great guy, fan-friendly, loves the sport, likes talking to people. He was good. And the rare, which I think, and I've told her this, so I could say it, how often do you get somebody who's not known in this world, per se, come in and lose a fight and be absolutely popular? Because Britton Hart did that.
Oh, well,
she came in, she fought a war, she didn't win, but people don't care. She did her thing, and people love her for it. And we've had Beck on, but I've been watching Beck since she was giving people the finger in the cage in MMA. So it's all good there. And we had Tony on and Joey, and those guys they're very nice, but they're scary dudes.
Yeah.
Like, they were very nice. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to walk up and be like, hey, I'm going to smack you because I'm not worried about it. No, I'd be very worried about it. But I think you guys have brewed talent almost faster.
Yeah. And
I mean, you got the big names on there, names people knew. It drew people in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's just, I don't know. I feel like you have to over-respect anybody that gets in there. Whether they lose, they win, it really doesn't matter.
Here's the difference in our sport. Before 1993, even in 1993, how many people knew what an armbar was, what a rear naked choke was, what a triangle choke was?
No one.
But 99% of the men I know have been punched in the face at some point in their life. In elementary school, in high school. A lot of people know what it feels like to get a bare fist upside their head. And it's not a great feeling. I'm not going to sit here and say that it hurts less. It does less damage. I mean, doctors have proven it's less traumatizing to the brain getting hit with a bare.
It hurts though.
But it still hurts. But
yeah.
I know thousands of men who've been punched upside the head, and when they see it, they can relate to it. They can say, "Oh man, that I know that one hurt." So now we have a sport, because it is a sport. So we have a sport that people can relate to, and it's safer than boxing and mixed martial arts. Would you rather get kneed in the face or punched in the face?
No.
You'd rather get punched in the face because it does less damage. So now we have a safer sport that more people can relate to, and now we're drawing big names. We're drawing the Becks. We're drawing the Groves, the Chris Lytles, the Joey Beltran, Leonard Garcia, lane. Like, we are drawing names that people have seen on The Ultimate Fighter, they've seen in the UFC, that have been at the pinnacle of other sports crossing over, and they're entertaining in this sport. It's not like they're coming on over and grappling. They're coming on over and they're knocking people out. And to go back to your question, the two I can tell you that didn't have a national name before but got more exposure afterward are, you said Britain Hart. Yeah, I mean, she fought her first burnt knuckle fight as a headliner against Beck Rollins, UFC veteran, for a title, and she held her composure. She didn't get starstruck. She didn't go in there, and some people, they call it the Tyson effect. They stand across from Mike Tyson. No one wants to be across from Mike Tyson. I don't care how old he is. So she didn't go in there and get starstruck. She went in there and she performed. No. She did well, and she, she got battered up. I'm not saying she looked bad by any means. She performed very well, but she didn't go in there and jab and not take injuries. She took cuts and bumps and bruises, and fought her tail off. Same thing with, I'll give my buddy Bruce a plug. He went in there. He came up a weight class to fight Kendall Grove, who was 4 inches taller than him. Ultimate Fighter winner, has a ton of experience, and everyone thought he wouldn't make it out of the second round. And he went in there and won 5 rounds with him. He got dropped, but he took a fight that everyone counted him out of, and he performed to the best of his ability on a short notice fight. Because, believe it or not, a lot of people don't want to fight Kendall Grove. The guy is 6'6", 6'7". He's tall. He has an incredible reach.
Yeah.
And he has just a ton of fighting experience. Yeah, and the guy's tough. So Marcel jumped on the fight. I don't even know if Marcel even paused when the fight was offered to him. It was like, hey, do you want to fight Kendall? Yes. I mean, but outside of him and Bruce, trying to find people to fight Kendall Grove before, that was tough. But like I said, Bruce stepped up, took the fight, and afterward, everything in his life, fight-wise, got better. He was getting calls about sponsors. He owns a local promotion in Virginia, so people were reaching out to him for that. He raised a lot of money in sponsorship. So I think those two people the most were people who were not nationally known, who got a ton of exposure because of our sport, and their fight careers are better now than they were before.
Now, it's kind of, I have to ask, especially from your perspective, and me and Josh were actually just talking about this. Do you feel like you guys have exploded even faster than you expected? Because you know how you start something, you're like, okay, we'll break even for the first 3. Then we'll make a little headway for 4, 5, and 6. I feel like you guys went from 0 to 100, because the best I could tell, the first event, people were on the fence, is it going to be good? Is it going to not be good? But that's expected. And then you have the people that are like, this is a bullshit, whatever, this isn't a sport. Then you had the diehard people that were like, yes, it's finally here. But at the end of the day, everyone watched. Whether they wanted it to work, they wanted it to fail, whether they were trying to decide, it didn't matter. Everybody watched. Since then, though, and obviously we follow it, it seems that every day it picks up more and more steam, to the point where after a year, it feels like you have already hit where you would project to be at 3 years. Does that, I mean, is it just us watching social media, or has it really exploded the way I'm thinking it did? Because we don't know the numbers. We have the fighters on, we have you guys on, we love being a part of things, but we don't do the numbers, and I'm not asking for the numbers. I'm just saying, am I shooting too far with my perception of what happened? Because it just seems like it tripled almost, I don't want to say overnight, but in less than a year.
So I'll tell you, June of 2012, Dave Feldman, his son, and I were sitting at the Sands Casino the day of our weigh-ins for our first show at the Sands. And Dave told me about, in 2011, the bare knuckle event they did with Bobby Gunn out at Fort McDowell Indian Reservation. Right. So I've been hearing about this for 6 years. And I think at any time when you have something that someone's telling you about for so long, and I know how good of business Dave does, I was just naturally expecting it to be huge. Without going into financials, the first event in Cheyenne on June 2nd of last year, It did. It was the #2 trending topic in the world on Twitter. Fact.
Wow.
So
Okay.
there was, I think NHL hockey was #1, and that's when like Las Vegas or something was, in the Stanley Cup. But I'm talking, out of every topic in the world, we were #2. So I don't know anyone that could have predicted that, though. I didn't predict that. I would have thought, top 10, top 20.
Yeah.
To say we're
Right.
#2 in the world of all topics. So at that point, that's when I was like, Dave built something here that no one can touch. I mean, it was a historic event. It will go down in history books because this sport's going to be around for decades. It's going to go down in history books that he promoted the first legal sanctioned regulated bare knuckle boxing event in the history, and it was #2 in the world being talked about. So at that point, no, none of us could have probably predicted that. Since then, though, the growth that we've seen, we kind of anticipated based off of that because we know the potential that we can reach based on how popular the first one was, and you can't imagine the exposure overseas. When we see some of these overseas companies or overseas people illegally streaming or showing the footage before it gets released, the numbers are incredible. I'm talking millions of views. That Britain versus Beck fight had millions of views on some of the posts that I've seen, and I'm talking a matter of days. So you're talking about two females who, fought an incredible match, and people all over the world watched it. Millions of people watched it outside of what bought the pay-per-view and saw the free posts that we did afterwards. So I'm excited to see. Our first show was June last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we just hit January, so you're talking 7 months, and in 7 months, the company is going international. In less than 30 days, we're going to be in Cancun, Mexico, at a huge arena. It's going to be in front of thousands of people with what could be the most stacked card yet, which is hard for me to say because a lot of people always say, "Oh, this card's better than all the rest." I mean, I don't want to jack some of the people's names on there, but if you look at our top 4 or 5 fights, we got some huge names on the card, and we're bringing some of the biggest names that we've had fight on our other cards back because they're so entertaining, and we want the first international show to be historic and memorable.
Yeah, man, we're super excited for Cancun. We've seen some of the stuff on the card, and I guess you can kind of base it just off Lopez Beltran alone. Like, all right, if this is on the card somewhere, you got to understand the rest of the card has to be good. And if you actually go through and research some of the Team Mexico fighters,
Yeah.
because I didn't know a lot of them.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, I didn't know a lot of them. But you go and research some of them, there's some real deal fighters on there. They're no joke. It's just you don't know them here. Plus, we're factoring in it's going to be so crazy because that community, they're very big on fighting. Like, they're all about their sports, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to put you in a position. I don't want to ask you anything that you can't answer. You know what I mean? It's not fair. People got to rent the pay-per-view to see this one. Bareknuckle.tv, shameless plug. What you were touched kind of on the March card in New England. Is there anything you can kind of tell us what's going on about that? I've heard some things through the grapevine, but none of it is, I won't say it because none of it's factual to me until one of you guys tells me. But so what is going on in the New England area?
So first and foremost, I'm a company guy. I don't put anything out until Dave or it gets official release on the Bare Knuckle site. That's just how I am. That's how you keep yourself out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we have going on is right now, it appears to be March 9th in New England. I will tell you the headlining fight is a name that if you're a fan of mixed martial arts, you will know the name. He is not a UFC veteran. However, this man comes to fight, and he always goes out there and puts on a phenomenal event. So we have 3 other UFC veterans that I'm talking to that have not fought for us previously who are looking to get on that card. We have some other guys who have 30-plus mixed martial arts fights that won on the card. And the thing is, a lot of times when people see the records, they're like, oh, this guy's 21 and whatever, or 24 and whatever. But then you look at them, and a lot of guys might have 10 or 12 wins by submission. We might have a guy who is 7-5, with 5 knockouts. So a lot of times I'm going after that guy because I know that guy's coming out to throw bombs, and to try and knock his opponent out. He's proven it in another platform. So our big thing that we look at for these fighters, because we have thousands of people, and that's no exaggeration, thousands of people are applying to fight for bare knuckle. At the October 20th show, Dave and I were driving around doing our last minute visits with local companies, and his phone was probably going every minute to 90 seconds with fighter applications coming through. I'm talking all day long. That's not including the dozens of people have reach out to me when he plugs my name on something or when people share my posts. So we have thousands of people trying to get on these cards, and there's so much talent in the New England area in mixed martial arts and in boxing. I mean, you have Philly, Boston, New York. There's tons of fighters up there who might be your traditional B-sider opponents. They might be 9-9, 10-10, but they fought the best. I mean, they might have fought 3 world champions and they're 10-10 or 10-12.
Yeah. That's
the kind of guy I'm looking for. That's going to go in there and lay it on the line. So we're looking to have 10 to 12 fights on every card because at the end of the day, we only need 10 fights. 10 fights is a full card. And if you saw our first event, we got all 10 fights televised on pay-per-view. That's huge.
Yeah.
Most of these pay-per-view cards by any other promotion don't have 10 fights. I can't name you another promotion that does 10 fights on a televised pay-per-view when you only have a 3-hour block plus your intros and exits and all that stuff. So we do have a lot of events coming up. The March card looks like March 9th. I jumped the gun when I put that out there, but it was one of those things where I talked to Dave on the phone. He's like, yeah, March 9th. He didn't say I couldn't say it, so I just put March 9th out there with the New England. Then he put it out there. That's the goal right now. And then we have a later date potentially in March or April. Then we'll be returning down to Mississippi.
Now, the New England area is broad. I guess there's no decision on, because the New England area from where I am could be an hour away or 12 hours away.
Absolutely.
So it's exciting though, because we sit on the edge. We're like, go check his Facebook real quick. Maybe it's on there, because you got to try to keep up. Keep up to speed with stuff. And
Nate,
I just think overall it's good.
Nate, what's the best place for maybe aspiring fighters or people who might be interested in getting on one of your guys' card? What's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Well, first, I always tell people to go and fill out the application. And the biggest reason is we take the information and we categorize it. We put them down into weight classes. So we do our weight classes on the 5s, which is different than mixed martial arts. And a lot of people think it's 170 or 185.
Right.
And that's not the fact for us. We do it 155, 165, 175, 185, 195, so on and so forth. So the most important thing is going and filling out the fighter app. From there, though, any of the fighters can reach out to me. The first thing I tell them is, or I ask is, where are you from and what's a link to your professional record? Because you could have a guy who's 1-3 pro MMA, but he could be 5-1 pro boxing, or vice versa.
Right.
He could be 0-4 pro boxing, but he could be 6-2 pro MMA. Because let's face it, they're 2 different sports. So I want to see the fighter's overall abilities. And if they're 6-2 MMA with 5 submissions or 5 decisions and they're 0-4 boxing, that's not really. I'm not going to consider that person compared to the 4-4 boxer who has 2 or 3 knockouts.
Right.
So first thing, fill out the application. But I always encourage people, reach out to me. Dave has 100 things going on. I mean, that man is so busy. Like I said, he's down in Cancun. It seems like every other week right now. I'm exaggerating, but just to get the point across, he has a lot.
Although he was just there, he just came back again. I know that.
Yeah. But they can reach out to me as well, and we'll do our best to consider them. I can't say do our best to get them on the card, because if we do 10 events a year and each event has 10 fights, you're talking about 20 fights per card. It's only 200 fighters that we can use, and we literally have, last I looked, it was like 2,300 people applying to fight. And those that's outside of the ones that hit me up and say, hey, I have no experience, but I'm undefeated in the streets. Like, I'm talking about legitimate fighters reaching out to me. We have thousands of them. So
do you get those messages? I'm undefeated street fighting.
Oh yeah, and I'm not knocking anyone, because I'm sure people are going to see this. But when I have someone call me and say, they did the last couple of years in prison, and they never had a MMA fight or a boxing match in their life. But they fought growing up, and they fought in prison, and they want to get in there because it's the only thing that they're going to be able to do fight wise. How can I use that person when you have guys like Chris Lytle, who went in there and knocked his opponent out in like 75 seconds?
Yeah.
Well, guys
That's like a safety hazard, isn't it, though, to stick a guy in there? I'm not knocking their hustle. I'm not saying they can't fight. But if you put them in there with a Chris Lytle, it's probably going to be a bad day for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's dangerous.
They might be able to hold their own against another untrained fighter. But the thing is, we're going after fighters that have, my rule of thumb right now is at least 3 wins. So if they're 3-4, I'm going to look at them. I'm giving them that courtesy because we are still a young sport, and a 3-4 MMA guy could be our next superstar.
Facts.
So we say at least have a couple pro wins and not be coming off of a knockout or TKO loss. Now, again, that's not the rule. Like, I'm not going to say if you're coming off of a knockout loss to a world champ that we're not going to take you, or a ground and pound loss in MMA. But if you just got knocked unconscious 2 months ago, and you're 2-2, I don't have a place to put them right now, and that's just being honest with them.
Yeah. Well, look, Nate, we appreciate your time, sir, so much.
Absolutely.
We know you're a busy guy. Guys, please go check this out. Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship #4. If you don't know who they are, or you're just still kind of on the fence about them, go check out some of their fights. Go to their YouTube channel. They got some free fights on there. Take advantage of it. Go check it out. It's the rule set is made for it to be super exciting. Every fight is exciting, and we can't wait for it. Saturday, February 2nd, Cancun, Mexico, live and only on pay-per-view. Go to bareknuckle.tv for more information. Also, stay tuned for Combat Insiders for more information as well as we bring it to you. And again, Nate Shook, we appreciate your time, man. Like
Absolutely.
I said, for Nick Portella, for Joshua Furs, we are Combat Insiders, and we're out.
Thanks, guys.